All right, so I wanted to add on one more quick piece called media queries. It's not technically a CSS selector, which is why it wasn't on the lecture originally, but it serves the same purpose. So I thought I'd show it to you. Let's start with a demo. So what I want to do is I want to actually open up. You should do this as well. Go into your code used in lecture folder. Find the media queries area. And then if you're opening it from Eclipse, you need to right click and you need to say open with system editor. And then your system editor is hopefully Chrome. So what that should do is that should open up an HTML file that looks kind of like this. So it'll say media width queries, and it'll have some text on here. And then the background will be some color. And what this does is if you change the width of the screen, it should change the background color. If you read the information on here, it says if it's less than 500 pixels wide, it'll be red. At 500, it should switch over to orange. And then at 600, it'll switch over to yellow. And then 700 is green, and then blue. And then if I keep going, eventually I'm at 900, which is purple. So the way it does what it does is with these media query rules. So it says at media, so it's got an at sign. An at sign is basically a way of telling your browser, hey, here comes something that isn't actually CSS. It's a directive or a command. In this case, it's a media command. There's a number of things you can do with media queries. You can do things like you can include a different CSS file, depending on like the screen width, or a different CSS file if it's landscape or portrait on a mobile device. There's a lot of things you can do. We're going to keep it really simple in this lecture, and we're going to focus just on doing things that are different based on the width, and actually doing things that are different within the same CSS file, so not loading different CSS files. So here's an example of like some of the code that's in this thing. So by default, the background color is red. That's how this thing works. And then there's an if statement here that's a media query. The way you should think about these as this is code which is going to get loaded in if it's true, but if it's not true, it's code that doesn't even exist. So you can see that if this code right here, this new rule that made it orange, if this rule existed, then it would be the same weight as the previous rule, and it would come later, so it would win, right? So if this rule is present, then it wins. And then, so then what we've got is we've kind of got the condition for whether it's included or not. Media queries have a lot of different types. There is a type for screen. There's also one for print, one for speech. There's probably a couple others as well. In general, if you left this out, the screen and it would still work, but it's good practice to say that this is a rule that's related to screens only. So it's an if statement that's an and, so it's for screens, and then there's a condition on the width. I always have trouble remembering how these things work. The way I read this is add this to all screens, assuming that the width is bigger than 500, right? So if the width is 600, this would be true. If the width was 300, this would be false. So assuming that it is 500 or greater, it includes it, and that's how it changes the color. You can actually go in and you can see the full code on this. So if I right click this time and I say open with HTML editor, sorry, I was off the screen there, you can actually see how this demo works, and that's exactly what it does, right? So it has a rule for min width 500, and then 6, and then 7, and then 8, and then 9. And so whenever the screen is wide, so here it's at 9, actually what's happening is all these rules are included. So there's actually like a bunch of rules for this body. You could actually, if you wanted, you could right click on it and you can say inspect elements. And actually the Chrome DevTools do a really nice job of showing you that it's green, but there was actually a rule present for orange, and there was actually a rule present for red and yellow, but green was the winner of the specificity battle because they tied in specificity and it came last. So it's kind of interesting that as you go back and forth, you can watch the Chrome DevTools say, hey, red, that's the only rule that I've got. And then as you go bigger, it'll say, because of these media queries, I've got new rules for the body. So I think it's really interesting to look at that. Min width is one way to do things. So min width lets you specify rules for big screens. There's also one called max width, which lets you specify things for small screens. Some people recommend that you think mobile first. So you kind of put in your mobile rules for your smallest screen first, and then you add rules for as the screen gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's kind of media queries. There's another demo in the lecture slides if you wanted to go to this other demo. This one I'm just taking you to a W3 schools. And what this one is as you change the width, the layout will change orientations. So you can see that it uses 3 columns. So it's kind of got drive and then the main and then it's got the right side. But if I make this screen smaller, so if I begin making this guy smaller, what's going to happen is at some point he pops to a different UI, right? So he pops to this mobile UI, which is all vertical. And this is called responsive UI, and the way this magic works is with these media queries. So it's a pretty easy demo, to be honest. That's all we wanted to tell you about media queries. Now you're at the end of the CSS selector exercise. You can see media queries weren't selectors, but they serve a similar purpose. So I wanted to at least tell you about them and let you see some of the example code. No exercises for media queries. All right, I promise that's the end of this unit. See you next time.